Welcome, everybody, to this week's edition of the RevOps podcast. I am, of course, your host, Jordan Henderson, and I'm joined today by Brandon and Jonathan. Go ahead and say hi, guys.
Hey, guys.
Hey.
I like that you said, hey, guys. So I meant you guys, as in say hey.
You said hey, guys, so I said hey, guys.
I know, you guys say hey to everybody.
Guys and
you
girls.
actually say hey, guys. But cool. Letting me lead the witness already. I really appreciate that.
Whatever Jordan says.
So this week, before we jump into the topic, I actually want to sort of tee this up because we're going to do something a little bit different to what we've been doing in the past, I think 14 or 15 episodes. Over the past couple of months, the conversations we've been having have really been what I would call sort of RevOps 101, right? Like they're very transactional operational things that are of course very, very important. And we've been talking about those in a specific manner in order to sort of highlight their importance across an organization, to sort of take them away from the mindset of like, this is just a sales ops thing, or this is just a marketing ops thing, or this is just a CS thing, and highlight how important it is for every team to be, actually key role players and key contributors in those decisions and in those processes. But time for us to shift, I think, to sort of what I would call RevOps 201. And in my mind, I have a grand master plan of what this all looks like, and we'll see if it's useful at all. And what I want to do for sort of this next stage is actually to start to talk about metrics that can help us align. And I think it's really important for us to start to look at not just like basic, boring metrics, but things that are transformational across your business, things that you can use to identify things and really what I would call like diagnostic metrics today. And so sort of as a place to start that I think makes a lot of sense, and this is the wordiest part that I will do in the podcast, I promise. But I think the thing that makes the most sense for us to start with, or a really good piece of starting point, is diagnostic metrics that will help us align our SDR and marketing functions. Because I think there are 1,000 of them. I think this is a really important piece of alignment between those two teams, which goes back to revenue operations, and is a foundational place for people listening to this who are just doing RevOps for the first time to start. So, Brandon, Jonathan, I did give you this is the only time I've ever prepped you in advance. I gave you 3 days notice that this was happening. Both of you ignored it. You looked shocked entirely that this is what's happening.
Wait, where am I?
Even though you both responded when I told you and said, sounds good. And then today you were
I
shocked.
don't believe I did that.
I think I have an auto reply.
Thumbs up emoji'd it, just so you know.
That sounds like me. Yeah, you're right. That sounds like me.
So thanks for really getting ready for this conversation. But I have 3 metrics, and I don't want to talk about like how many phone calls you're making, how many emails you're sending, how many contacts you're creating. Like, those are quantity metrics. Of course they're important. Everybody should be looking at those. But how many emails I'm sending isn't necessarily the best starting point for me to figure out where to align my sales and marketing team. So I have 3 metrics in mind that I want to talk about today that I think are really, really cool, fun, important metrics. The first one, and I'm going to jump right in, barring any objection from the two of you, is pickup rate. I think pickup rate is a wonderful metric. Pickup rate, for everybody listening, I'm just going to skip asking you guys for the definition today.
How many times people are picking up?
The rate.
Yeah. I like that was the whiniest voice I've ever heard used on this podcast. All right. Pickup rate is measured as a percentage of leads worked out of the number of leads assigned in a given time period. So I'm actually thinking of it a lot differently than what you said, Jonathan. What I'm thinking of is how many of the marketing leads are actually getting picked up by sales, right? Which is very, very important. It's just to understand. Yeah, exactly. You're getting worked. Like our reps, our SDRs working the leads that are being assigned to them. Mm-hmm. Very, very important metric for alignment, right? Because you get marketers, and I think both of you have said this to me before, sales isn't working our leads.
I've never said that before.
This is blasphemy.
Jonathan has definitely said that to me.
He said it this morning.
And you get sales reps on the inverse who say marketing is sending us crap leads.
Right, exactly, yeah.
And that creates
Never.
amount of friction, amount of bashing between those two teams that is just fundamentally misaligning your organization and creates a huge problem. And if you have bad pickup rates, you actually don't. You're not working the leads, so the marketing is right. Second, you actually can't even prove that the leads are bad because you're not working them, so you don't have accurate data about whether or not they're bad. So it creates a lot of problems, right? Why is pickup rate important to you guys? And I think this is, I picked this one to start because I thought it'd be like low hanging fruit. You guys can slam dunk this. If you can't, then I'm going to be a little upset. But why is pickup rate important?
Oh, there's a lot of reasons, but one of the biggest is just the ability to know what's working and what's not working. So if they're not working leads, they're just leaving them open, assuming they're no good, just because they've had a few that are no good, then there's no feedback loop to tell us, okay, we need to optimize. We need to make sure we're sending you better data or better leads. A lot of times, sometimes you'll have a bad phone number because that's just kind of the nature of the beast. People will put in fake phone numbers because they don't want to be called. So there's also a data element to that where you've got to also make sure your data is tight.
It's true. I like that. I'm not surprised, but I like that you went straight to data integrity as a part of this.
Recurring theme.
But to your point, yeah, I mean, if you're not working the leads, you don't get any data as to the quality of the leads, what's working, what's not working, and you can't feed that back upstream, right? Like that does create a huge problem and a misalignment in your revenue operation that actually diminishes both your conversion and your ability to help marketing improve, which... Yeah. Just not working leads because they're bad doesn't help marketing improve.
Exactly. And on the inverse of that, we also need to know what's working, which obviously we'll see that easier because we know they're getting converted into opportunities. So we get to see that a little more visibility into that. But yeah, I think not just leaving leads open. Don't do that, salespeople. You gotta create that feedback loop for us.
Yeah, exactly.
To your point of what's working, if you're not working a healthy percentage of them, if the pickup rate is low, you can also get false flags, which can be hugely problematic. So if reps are like, I'm only going to call the ones that are SDR managers, and then marketing looks at it and goes, SDR managers, every SDR manager converts. Nobody else is converting. Like, we're going to put all of our marketing budget into SDR managers. Like, that is a false flag. You actually just don't know if the rest is working because they're not getting worked appropriately, right?
Yep. Yeah, we see a lot of instances where people make assumptions without using data to back up those assumptions. And I mean, everybody's guilty of it. It's not just one side of the fence, but you have to use data to be able to kind of prove your points out, and don't just assume things without being able to see the data that proves it.
Totally agree. Brandon, what do you want to add in here?
Yeah. Well, when I look at things like when I'm trying to figure out what's working and what's not, like usually my question is like, is what I'm looking at by channel, I'm looking at by persona, I'm looking at by campaign, right? And then that way too, you can always be monitoring that stuff so that if you do have a dip, it's like, okay, is this like, did we change the content here? Did we change something with the channel? Did the channel itself change? Or maybe, an SDR got promoted and now you have lower headcount. So you got to, now it's like, all right, I got to go talk to sales and we got to plan better or whatever that might be. Or it's like, all right, guys, like if none of that, like I'm investigating, none of that is true, then it's like, okay, well, let me go talk to the reps themselves and ask them why they're not following up with these leads, or why they're not working them, or whatever that might be. So it's like, definitely look at the data, but the data is not going to tell you the entire story, right? You do have to keep digging and always be actually talking with the sales team. Yeah, totally.
Mm-hmm. And for everybody listening, if your pickup rate is below 95%, it's bad. Frankly, like anything less than 95% is bad. 95 to 100 is your target range. Anything below that, there's a problem somewhere. And it could be a lot of places. And so that's sort of the next transition. So I'm a company, I'm looking at pickup rate for the first time, right? And I go and look at my pickup rate and it is 81%. Now I immediately, that's a red flag because I'm only calling 4 out of 5 leads that I'm generating from a marketing side, right? That's a lot of money that I'm spending on my marketing team that my sales team isn't working. And there's a reason for that. And that could be a lot of reasons. That's the reason I call this a diagnostic metric, is because now I know that there's a problem. Now I have to dig deeper and I have to look at any of a half a dozen reasons why that could be the truth, right? What would you do first? Like, my pickup rate is bad. What do I do next?
Say analyze the data first and foremost. So you've got to take a look at why. You've got to try to take a look at the quality of your leads and figure out, okay, are they not working them because they're bad quality, or are they not working them just because they don't have the time to, Or are they making assumptions that these are just going to be bad leads and I'm going to let them sit out here? So you have to those are kind of three big scenarios you'd have to try to figure out.
And I love that you're answering this purely from the marketing side because no, like that's awesome because like you took that very introspectively of like the things that I can control that I would want to investigate, right? Because the things in the RevOps that I would want to control here and look into are like, are the leads getting assigned properly, right? First and foremost, like, am I giving the leads to the reps and notifying them that they have these leads? Because if not, then they're not. That's not their fault. That's my fault. I haven't operationalized this, right? Super important. Are they trained? Have we done enablement to train them on how to handle these leads? Do they know where to put these leads? They know to put them in a sequence. They know they're supposed to call them, right? Have we set expectations and trained the team against doing those things? Like that's also super important. And then if all of that's true, then are the leads just crap? Like, are we just sending them bad leads? Or to Brandon's point earlier, do we have too many leads and too few headcount? Like, do we need to hire somebody? Do we need to do more targeted approach? Like, what does that look like?
Is it a capacity issue? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Like,
Totally.
yeah, my mind always goes to like, what changed? What changed here? Is it something with the campaign? Is it the channel? Is it the team and sometimes maybe it's like your systems got broken and now, one of your channels isn't passing leads back to your CRM or your marketing automation. Right. Yep. And, that's Jordan or Jonathan's sweet spot there.
Jonathan screwed up, right? Like, and then the last bit that I would always look for is, are we actually getting the right data to actually do these things, right? Like, I've actually seen at a company a marketing team take off phone numbers from all forms, and then they got mad at sales for not making calls. And it was like, well, what do you mean? Like, there's no phone number to call. Like,
but our form conversions go up.
Yeah, form conversions were great, but there was no phone number. So
I get more leads that I can.
And they're like, why didn't you email? I'm like, well, they put in a Gmail, and I didn't get a phone number, so I don't really know what to do with that. Which are like, again, like, super easy solve, right? But very, very important. And the honest reality is we just talked through, are they getting assigned properly? Are reps trained on how to do them? Do reps get notified about them? Are the leads good? And are we getting all the data we need for the reps to work them? If you're at, say, 80% out of 100% on this metric, it's probably a combination of a few things. You probably need to train the reps and improve the lead quality to get to that 95 range, right? Like there's probably a few things you need to tweak. It's not just pulling one lever, it's pulling 3 or 4 levers at the same time in order to get that number to a healthy range.
Well, all right. Question for you then, Jordan. It's say that some listeners are not there yet. Like they're sitting at 80%. What can they do to actually get that up to the 90, 95, 100%?
I mean, yeah, it depends on what further problems they've identified, but the most important thing is easily, I think, to make sure the leads are getting routed appropriately and timely and assigned to somebody, that they are getting notified when that happens, and that they know what to do and have the tools to do something with them. And I mean, like, put them in a sequence, make phone calls. They have a dialer, they have a sequencing engine, and they have a training and expectation around doing that. And then you can track that they're actually doing it, right?
Right.
Yep,
Once you've
foundation.
done right, and that is like exactly foundational. And once you've done that, if reps still aren't calling, that's when you start to get concerns of like, are we not getting the right data? Are we not getting good leads? Is there a reason we're not calling these? That's when you go back to marketing with like, hey, here's what's happening. Hey, we're not. This is 20% of these are interns. That's why we're at 80%, right? And you would check that at the start to make sure that's not the problem. But before I would even answer the other questions, the foundation I have to be really confident that foundation exists. Man, that's the first time you guys have ever asked me a question on this podcast.
Turn it around.
Hey. Ooh. Not tired of hearing from me yet. All right. Oh, man. Whew, moving on. All right, so
long day, Jordan.
Jonathan was texting me pictures of his fish tank at 11 p.m. last night. Just so you know.
Fish tank, new fish tank,
and his reef tank, the Neo, was it Neo reef tank? Is that what it is?
Red Sea Max Nano.
Red Sea Max Nano reef tank. Jonathan got a special lens to put over his camera so that he could take better photos of his reef tank.
Oh.
I was hoping that wouldn't go public.
He sent me he sent me the difference between
It's a big
with the
difference.
lens and without the lens. I mean, it is, but it's a fish tank. So like, it's a big difference
wonderful
in
fish tank.
in the ultimate small pond. You know,
I was proud of it. Okay.
we're back on track. I can't deal with this anymore. All right, this is sloppy. All right, the next metric I want to talk about today. This one is near and dear to me. I think everybody at Ring DNA loves this metric. I think it's super, super powerful. Speed to lead, right? Anybody want to offer up a definition of speed to lead?
The time it takes for a follow up after a hot lead conversion. Somebody saying, I want a call, I want a demo. How quick are you getting back to them when they say that?
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. We all agree. That's a good definition. I love it. And by the way, it's not just hot leads. I don't think it's whatever leads you deem are very, very important, right? And it can be measured across all leads. Typically, hot leads is the best way to think about it. There's a fun stat on this from Lean Data, by the way, that leads that are contacted within the first hour are 7 times more likely to ultimately convert than leads that are contacted after the first hour. Which is 7 times. 7x is a big percentage or like multiple, right? 60 times more likely to convert than those contacted 24 hours later. So speed to lead, very, very important, right?
Muy importante.
Thanks for what? I can't. All right. So why is speed to lead important to you guys? Brandon, let's go with you. I want to hear some Brandon Redlinger riffing. Tell us about some author that told you about this or something.
I read it in a book because I read a lot, guys. Just wanted to let you know. No, I mean, like you said right there, like you're. I mean, I a lot of the stats that I've heard is like 30 minutes. Well, even like 5 minutes is the best response time. Like I was actually looking at some stats too. It's like. If you don't contact them within 5 minutes after that, your odds at qualifying go down by 80%.
That's the drift from Drift, right?
Oh, I don't know. Could be.
I'm pretty sure that's stat.
Could be drift.
You're just making up stats. Quote the stat source, all right?
80% of stats are made up on
we
the
are
spot.
qualifying our stats on this podcast, all right? I'm pretty sure that's from Drift, actually. I was on a panel with somebody about SDRs a couple weeks ago, and somebody from Drift actually threw that stat out there. So,
right, and I think there's also other research out there. I might have been like one of the analyst firms that say like. It's something like 70% or 75% of companies go with the first vendor that they talk to. Like that is huge. Yeah. And that makes a lot of sense, right? Like if you're curious about conversation intelligence, if I'm the first person you're talking to, I get to actually shape how you think about conversation intelligence and how you evaluate. And, I then go on this journey with you. I'm a trusted advisor, hopefully, at that point, right? And they look to Ring DNA, and then ultimately, they trust us. They have confidence that we can actually solve their problems because we set those problems up, and then they're going to buy from us. So yeah, I think like overall, yeah, all of the metrics that you care about, pipeline, qualified pipeline, revenue. I'm sure there's metrics out there that say that the customers stay longer too, but I mean,
probably stay longer, probably buy more. It's probably all of the above, right?
Yeah.
Give you better NPS scores.
Exactly.
No, I love that though.
It's just kind of early bird gets the worm because, if you think about yourself doing that evaluation, you kind of start to lean towards the first person that reaches out because that's the first person that's showing you the tool. So if you're not seeing anything you don't like, what's the reason to move on to the next tool? Because you're already liking what you're seeing. So
totally. There's also a really easy reason why this is important. And first, from a marketing standpoint, right? It's important because it increases conversion. So you guys spending a bunch of money on marketing as our listeners. We want the best chance of converting. Now think about your day. If you're listening to this, your day is very slammed, right? You have like 9 hours of meetings, stuff to do all day. And somebody comes to you and says, hey, we need to evaluate CPQ software. First thing you're going to do is block off 30 minutes at some point in the next day or two. And you're going to go look up CPQ software and you're going to sign up for demo requests on 3 or 4 websites. If somebody calls you during that 30-minute window that you've got blocked off to talk about CPQ software, you're available to talk about CPQ software because you've literally blocked off this time in your mind, at least, to do this thing, right? After that 30-minute window, you're on to the next meeting, and that is the back of your mind for the next 24, 48, 72, maybe forever, right? And so that 5 minutes means, hey, you just signed up for a demo. I know you're available to talk about this right now. It also, by the way, signals that my sales process is buttoned up, which is going to make this a really good buyer's experience for you.
Totally, yeah.
Yeah.
Back when I was an SDR, during peak hours, we got response time down to 2 minutes. So people would be like, "Oh wow, I just filled out your form.
I just hit submit."
Yeah, exactly. And like they're kind of caught off guard because they were not expecting that. So they're not ready to like throw up objections, or like they're so early that they're like, "Okay, yeah, well, why don't you tell me about this?" Right? Yeah. It's not like, no, I'm talking to you later. It like they actually talk to you when you can get to them that quickly.
And something to kind of add to that is shout out to our buddies in qualified.com, a tool like that where you can pounce on somebody on your website, filling out on your demo request page. Maybe they didn't even fill it out yet. You can pounce on them, say, hey, do you have any questions or things like that? And all of a sudden you're faster than speed to lead because they haven't even filled out the form yet.
You're welcome, Craig from Qualified. We expect to hear from you shortly.
We would like a commission.
Alec, would you please follow up with Craig? Alec is messaging. He says no free promos. Oh, well, you're going to have to email Craig and let him know no free promos. So, all right. So moving on to the second half of this question. So my speed to lead is bad. What do I do? Where do I start?
Okay. Well, yeah. Okay. So I think there's a lot of places where you could start. So it's like, well, easy one is just like, are the systems hooked up properly? Right. Go to your MOPS.
Super important.
Right.
Super important.
Foundation.
Yep. Yeah. Like you said, yeah, the foundation. And then from there, it's like, all right, well, do the reps have everything, all the info that they need to follow up? And if they don't, maybe you add some fields. Maybe you do some data enrichment with, like your Zoom info or whatever. And then you can start looking at, maybe it's reps don't know which leads to follow up with, right? So it's like a matter of prioritization for them. So just making it easier for the reps themselves, or even putting the right fields in front of the reps. So like reps love to know the lead source or the campaign conversion, right? If they have that and it's right in front of them as soon as that lead comes in, they're not digging around, they're not clicking around, they're not scrambling to find info for context for that conversation.
And it should be not to tout Ring-DNA, but we do this here, right? We put their LinkedIn profile, where they came from, their title, their company, all of that directly. Like it pops up in the reps dialer while they're sitting at the computer. Like, call this person. By the way, here's what you need to know. Click their link. 2 minutes later, you can give them a call with enough research to have a good conversation, and then we real time coach you through the call with Yoda. But super, super important, right? They can do 2 minutes of quick research because they have data at the point of decision. They have it readily available.
Exactly. That's it right there in a nutshell. Data at the point of decision. I don't want to have to click 10 times to get to the info that I need. I want it right there so that I can follow up immediately. And then also, maybe this goes back to the routing piece, but like making sure it does get routed to the proper rep in the first place. Mm-hmm. Right?
And promptly, by the way, this is actually very important because I've worked with a lot of companies on this specific issue. Is they're like, our speed to lead is slow. This lead converted and nobody called him for 20 minutes. And the one thing that I would always check right away is when was it actually assigned to when they actually called? Because a lot of times they're like, oh, this lead converted at 11 a.m., but we called him 11:22. It was assigned at 11:18.
Right.
And I'm like, what happened for 18 minutes in your routing system, right? Like that 18 minutes is killer. It's absolutely killing you. And oftentimes what that is like delays in API connections, or you've got different layers in between that are enriching the data that take time to run before you actually assign the lead, things like that they're slowing you down that might not be as valuable as you think they are, that you can rip out or change or pay more for better API to increase your speed per lead. But that's a great place to start from operationalizing. Like, am I actually giving them the chance to call this lead within the first 5 minutes?
Yep. Absolutely. And then the other thing is like, if you do have that information, well, we all know reps spend like only a third of their time actually selling. This helps you get that up to maybe half the time.
Oh, way more.
Or way more than that. Yeah. Which I don't think any manager has ever been mad about if they spend more time actually selling.
We're spending way too much time selling.
Talking to people way too much, guys.
God, we just need some quiet time to spend in Salesforce is what we need.
Let's enter more data manually.
Yeah. But like to walk through what we do at Ring DNA and because our speed to lead is very good and it's something we're super mindful of because we're very passionate about it. Is lead comes in, it is routed within a minute or two tops, right? Like we have the data we need. We made sure we did on the marketing side. It comes in, it's routed to the appropriate SDR or AE on the spot, kicks it to them. They get in their dialer all the information, where it came from, their job title, their role, what they converted on, a link to click their LinkedIn and pop that open, and a big red notification that says, this is a hot lead, call them right away, right? And if they don't call them within 15 to 20 minutes, I think it's 20 minutes right now, we reassign it to somebody else to go call that person because it is that important. We're like, you missed your window, which by the way, like if you're on a demo or something and you miss it, it's that important to me that I want somebody to call them so fast that I'm like, cool, you missed it. It's somewhere else now. Like somebody else is calling them within 2 minutes because I cannot let this sit past an hour. Like absolutely cannot let it happen. And we use obviously Ring DNA's dialer to do that, which is one of my favorite feature of our platform. So I will tout that one very much. I love that thing.
It's an amazing dialer.
It is a great dialer. It is. And that hot leads notification, oof, man, that is good. It's a good thing. All right, so then let's do this. So my speed to lead is bad. I've gone through operationally, I'm sound, right? Like I'm assigning leads, reps are getting notified. We have an SLA in place around expectations of how fast they'll call. Speed to lead is still bad. What do I do?
I'd start secondly around coaching.
Great point.
Maybe there's some coaching that needs to take place. Maybe they aren't looking at the right spots to make sure that they're not missing these hot leads as they come in. Maybe they have the wrong talk tracks. Maybe they're making those judgment calls that this lead isn't worth it without really kind of vetting it first.
It's true. Yeah. I mean, it's there's sort of like two pieces to that, right? One of them is go tap the SDR manager on the shoulder and say, hey, have you trained your team on what to do with good leads? Like, are we right? Like, are we doing any enablement training around this? And the other one's go tap the marketing guys on the shoulder and say, hey, you looking at the quality of these leads? Are they good enough for us to call right away? Are we setting expectations that we're going to call a bunch of people that downloaded an infographic within 5 minutes? Because that's not going to happen, right? like if it's a pricing request, yeah, we can do that. But like, are we lining these leads up appropriately? Like, yeah, of course. What else? Anything else?
I think operationally is the biggest piece of that one. I think that's really the key, and then the coaching. And I can't really think of anything on top of that. That would be super important. For me, it's expectations. After that, it's the team needs to have clearly set expectations, and you need to have a way that you can track that you're meeting those expectations and coaching on it on an ongoing basis. If you don't pay attention to speed to lead for any period of time, it will immediately go bad again. Like people get busy, and if you haven't set expectations and told everybody this is what you need to do and I'm going to ping you if you're not doing it, then you're still not going to do it, right? Yep,
totally.
Cool. All right, speed to lead. I love it. We got one more. I got one more that I want to talk about. I think the last one will be brief. It'll be more of an interesting one. Call outcome percentages. I love call outcome percentages. We look at this quite a bit. And what I mean by that is we disposition every call, right? So if I make a cold call, I disposition it. I left a voicemail, left an in-person message, had a great phone call, booked a meeting, guy hung up on me, whatever. Everybody's got 14 call dispositions or whatever they look like at every company. Rate those. What's neutral? What's negative? What's positive, right? Like booked a meeting, positive, of course. Left a voicemail, neutral. Like it wasn't a bad, like wrong number, bad. Guy hung up, bad. Told me not to call, bad. There's way more bad than good. Let's be totally honest. This is sales. Like the bad is very high, but neutral is also high. And then look, like out of the 10,000 phone calls we've made the past 30 days, what percentage of those were good outcomes? And you can segment this out to just inbound generated leads. What percentage of our inbound calls against inbound leads were good outcomes? What percentage were bad outcomes? What percentage were neutral outcomes? Right? Super important statistic. That's a really long definition of it. Why is it important?
It's showing the quality, I think, over anything else. You're getting the right titles, you're getting the right people at the company. and you're really kind of getting your foot in the door easier. So it's just showing that you're getting fed leads that are the right people more often than not.
It's definitely a great metric for marketing to look at whether or not they are feeding SDRs high quality leads with good data, right? For sure. I 1,000% agree with that. And if you're having nothing but bad dispositions, that is a lot of wasted money from every party involved in this scenario. But what else? What other things why would it be important?
No, I think on the sales side of the fence, are the reps speaking about the product succinctly? Are they actually selling it right? Like, or are they just annoying the crap out of the people they're calling and just droning out their script? And then all of a sudden, that could be a case too. So having something that can listen in, or it goes back to coaching. Yeah,
like what kind of objections am I getting that we're not handling well? Like what, like are my reps trained well enough to have good calls? Like that's the question. Right. Like if they're not, like if we look at the lead quality looks great and we still have 0.1% positive call outcomes, then like my reps aren't trained well enough. This is a problem.
Yep.
Well, it's even like, are we talking to the right people too? Right? Like
also great.
Yeah, I always want to make sure that, like, when I'm talking to the SDR team, it's like, all right, do you have all the context that you need for a good call, right? Have we trained you properly to talk about all of the content? You know, I'm thinking about that one all the time, but it's like, actually, your personas, like, do we still have the right personas that we've trained you on? Like, or do we need to revisit our personas or revisit our persona training on how to talk to a RevOps person versus, a marketing person or whatever that might be.
I love that. So you're going into like, is the messaging aligned? Like, is the messaging we've trained them on aligned to who we're targeting? Like,
so I think about that all the time. Yeah, 100%.
I feel like this keeps you up at night a little bit. It should, by the way.
Yeah,
like this,
exactly.
That's important. Like that is an important piece of information.
But to that title point as well, like even if it's the wrong title, don't be afraid to ask who the right person I should call is, because you can get in that way too.
And that goes back to the training piece, right? And like a call disposition would be like, got a referral. Like that's a positive call disposition. That's great. We want that like all the time, right? And that goes into the positive bucket. Like that's like if you're getting no referrals, that's training because you should get some, right?
Yeah, I mean, it can't just be like, oh no, I'm not the right person, and then say, okay, bye, hang up. Like you've got to try to get to that right person.
The best is, and I, by the way, I will always do this when they ask, especially if it's one of you two. If somebody emails me or calls me and they're like, hey, I want to sell you this marketing ops software. I'm like, yeah, actually, like I'm not the right person. They're like, who is? And I'll be like, Jonathan Stevens. And they'll be like, do you want to send an intro? And I'll be like, yeah, absolutely. I'll send an intro. Like, here's his cell phone number. Here's his house address.
That's why I'm getting all these calls.
I mean, they've asked. I just, they feel like they earned it. So
yeah, there you go.
yeah. Cool. All right. So the why, obviously, I like this metric. I think this is also a super good diagnostic metric for the sales and marketing alignment piece specifically, which, if you guys noticed, is very much the theme today. Mm-hmm. So then the next half of the question, of course, is so my call outcomes are high in the negatives and low in the positives. Where do I start? How do I fix this?
So the first place that my mind goes is, and this is what I do, is like, all right, is this the right title? Is this the right company? And if I'm still getting a lot of bad call outcomes, I'm going to go listen to those calls, right? Because I don't know if the data is going to actually tell me that much.
By the way,
right? It's like so then you can actually figure out, is the training off, or like, is it maybe it's their tone, maybe it's their approach, right? Maybe it's some of these nonverbals.
Maybe our dialer has bad connectivity or something. It could be all sorts of things that could be causing this.
Right, exactly. It might be that, like, we're all on Zoom these days. I'm going to go actually watch the Zoom. Does this person have a frown on his face, or whatever?
Is this camera off? Is this camera off? And is this picture a picture of him and his cat?
Exactly.
Anybody with a cat, I'm sorry, but that's Jonathan. So.
Don't insult Frank.
But no, I mean, you're totally right. I think like the first place I would start is exactly what you said. Like, is the targeting right? Like, because that's often if you have a whole team of people making calls into, inbound leads and they're all getting bad outcomes consistently, it's less likely that 10 people are all trained improperly than it is that the leads aren't great, right? And so that would be where I would start. That's the easiest thing to look at. And by the way, you should always tweak that anyways. So even if you make some adjustments there, it's not going to matter. Like that you want to do that. That's great. And then I would still go look at it. Even if I make tweaks there, I'm like, hey, these are wrong leads. I would still go listen to those calls. Why were they the wrong leads? I want to understand that. And I would go find the calls that are dispositioned that way and then listen to them and say, hey, like, you know what? A lot of these were bad, but here's 7 objections, or this is an objection we got 7 times out of those 30 calls, and like we really need to train against that. By the way, we also need to tell marketing about that objection because marketing can probably try to cut the head off that snake before it ever gets to us.
Dude, I'm asking reps all the time about that. Like, what objections are you getting that we don't have training for? And then I want to get that ahead of that with not only training, but content. Right?
Yeah, the marketing materials can answer that.
Exactly. Like there's so much that we can do so that they don't have to even answer that question in the first place, right? Totally. That's what marketing. But one other thing that you made me think of is, let's look at the reps too. Maybe all the bad dispositions are from one rep.
Also true.
Right.
Also,
like
great
I've had that happen plenty of times before. And it's like this rep just doesn't want to dispose it. Like he thinks every call is a bad call. And on the inverse,
maybe one is nothing but booking meetings, and you're like, oh my god, can we just listen to all of their phone calls and train everybody to do exactly what they're doing? And we're going to take what they're saying and put it in our marketing materials, and we're going to take what they're saying and have our AEs do it. And we're going to that happens too. Like there's sometimes where it's just insane.
Put her on a webinar. Exactly.
This person is just the face of our company.
Exactly.
It just happens.
Yeah, we've got some incredible reps that we definitely benchmark against. So
yeah, we had a rep recent. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, James Marlowe he booked like 17 meetings last week, which is just insane. Like we were like, what? Like what is James doing? If you have to answer, and like that's a great question to have to answer. Like what is he doing, and how do we get everybody to do the same thing? Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And how do we take that and inform marketing? How do we take that and inform product, by the way? But that's a whole other conversation for another day.
Now we're talking.
I think that's why it's so important to have team reports so you can see, okay, you've got some top performers and then you've got some people who aren't performing that well. Let's figure out what the difference is.
Totally. And all of these metrics that we've talked about today, when we talk about, like, broadly speaking, like call outcome percentages, you should, of course, look at it as team, but you should also look at it as an individual level. Like, you should be tracking it rep to rep, right? And those are easy dashboards to make if you have the right data. Speed to lead, again, as a team, also as individuals. Pickup rate, again, as a team, also as individuals. These are important stats for every individual to be tracked on if you're an SDR manager, as well as aligning the two teams, right? They're really, really powerful. Cool. I love it. I mean, I'm fired up about our metrics conversation, which everybody listening is going to be like, "What a nerd!" But just remember before you call me a nerd that Jonathan bought special lenses to take pictures of a reef tank.
That reef tank was expensive, man. You got to make sure people can. It was
probably like only half as expensive as the special lens that you have to buy to take photos of.
Is this the reef tank that got delivered during the middle of one of our episodes?
The listeners get to follow along the journey of Jonathan's reef tank, which is the worst side story in any programming ever, probably.
Well, now we have to we got to put some pictures on our RevOps podcast LinkedIn page.
Oh, no.
You don't have to tell me twice.
I can't. He's got great photos of it now.
Yeah.
He's got to use that lens. All right. That noise, of course, means that it is time for This Week on LinkedIn. And I got a really good question. And by the way, I realized this week that I've started doing this. It's a bad habit, but people message me questions on LinkedIn and I put them in a Google Doc so I can remember them. And then I forget to respond to them. And so I'm just sort of
Jordan guys,
rudely. I'm like, oh yeah, I'll bring this up. And then they'll get an answer. But this episode is going to come out in 4 weeks. So it's a really long time for them to wait. So I need to.
They probably ask other people.
My point is, I'm sorry everybody listening. I'm going to do better about responding to you in real time. Please do send me your questions. They've been awesome so far. This week I got a really awesome question, which I'm gonna just read it off here. I just listened to the episode on the SDR function, and I'm curious if you have any thoughts around how to handle competition on accounts between inbound and outbound SDRs. Ooh. And I know Jonathan particularly will have super strong thoughts on this.
You snooze, you lose.
Well, go on. Say more about that. That.
I mean, if the AE is not spending the time on that account and someone comes inbound, give it to the SDR. Let the SDR go after it. The last thing you want to do is just let an account sit.
Goes back to speed to lead, which we talked about pretty aggressively, right? The importance of speed to lead.
But it is a balance you have to find, because obviously if they've got open opportunities, you leave that account alone. So it all comes back to making sure your data is in a point where you're not routing stuff that's got open opportunities or it's about to close and you're going to ruin the deal by sending an SDR after a pretty far along deal. So you do have to be careful, but at the same time, don't let that account sit. Go after it.
Totally. Brandon, any thoughts?
No, I mean, geez, I think it's
nothing.
Probably
nothing.
Well, let's see. Read the question again.
This is Brandon getting caught not paying attention. I
wasn't paying
you were
attention.
on Slack right now, weren't you? Do you have thoughts around how to handle competition on accounts between inbound and outbound SDRs?
Competition on accounts.
Yeah.
Meaning like you got inbound is getting better accounts.
No, it's like, say like your outbound team is working a bunch of accounts, but then somebody else at the account or somebody from the account comes and converts by inbound, gets assigned to an inbound lead. Like, how do you handle that?
Oh, I see. Oh, got it. Okay. Geez. Okay. I feel like if sales and marketing were really aligned, and that the team was all like rowing in the same direction, it really doesn't matter who gets credit for it. Usually when you're fighting for credit, that means one team is not performing well, right?
Yep.
Like when people really start looking at those sorts of things, it's because someone's really not doing their job well. So it's like if we can all be on the same page, if we're all striving towards the same goal, if we're all like supportive of each other, it doesn't become a game of, I want credit for that. It becomes a game of, hey, like maybe inbound isn't at like lower volume or conversions on inbound. What can we do together to make that better, right? It's not, hey, that's your fault. That's not me, you know?
Mm-hmm. It speaks to the alignment and the coordination of everything too, because if they're competing, that's one thing. If they're working together, that's a whole new thing.
Attribution, when we talk about attribution is and should be, by the way, and most companies I don't think do this. I think everybody does this wrong, frankly. Attribution is a diagnostic metric.
Right.
It lets me look at where, like, I'm actually not fighting over this, but what I am doing is I want it to be honest and accurate because it allows me to look at where something might be wrong in the business, so then I can dig deeper and find out how to fix those things, right? Like that's the purpose of attribution, nothing more than that.
Right.
That is, and we do this wrong. Everybody does this wrong. We fight over attribution. Like this one's sales, this one's marketing, and that's dishonest to the business. It should be clean. It should be who actually, like, in a way that's honest and good for the company, it should be attributed. And then it becomes a valuable diagnostic metric for you to just like identify what's broken if any number is ever wrong. And people should be comfortable, by the way, that, hey, like we didn't generate enough pipeline this quarter. Like, that's great. Let's dig deeper. We've identified that. Let's fix it, right? Like comfortable failing. That's fine. By the way, from a specific answer to this question, inbound and outbound, first, the most important thing is to set up your data routing, your data integrity of your CRM, so that if I'm an outbound AE and I am calling and emailing a person at Oracle every day, and then they convert by inbound, 1,000% I should have the muscle in place that person gets routed to me so I can call them, because I've been working the crap out of that, right? And that is, get it to me so I can call them within 10 minutes, because my name's probably familiar to them, also super important. Speed to lead, still don't want to forget about, but if I can route it directly to that person, great. And you should be able to do that. We do that here.
Or coach the rep to just be able to look into that account
quickly, identify it, like quickly notice it, right?
Yeah.
Also totally fine if you don't have the tools in place to do it. But if it's somebody new entirely, like say I get routed a lead and Jonathan's reaching out to somebody else at the account, let the person that gets routed it go for it. Speed to lead. Like, let's just convert this and get this revenue in the pipeline. That's it. Like that would be my thing. And fixed compensation on the back end. If inbound and outbound SDRs are bickering over this, like figure it out on the back end. Like comp however you can to make it appropriate for them, but don't sacrifice speed to lead. Don't sacrifice important performance metrics just because of fairness. You can create fairness without doing that.
Yeah. And ultimately, it's just hurting your business because now they're worried about themselves as opposed to actually bringing money in.
Like, oh, but I'm not going to get this. Like, no, whatever. We'll take care of you. Like, trust us, you know? Like,
I do love like friendly competitions, but like that's only if your team is like you have a well-aligned team. And one thing that John Miller always said, and this was always how we did it at Engagio, it's like you don't use attribution to prove things, you use it to improve things.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I love that.
That's John Miller.
Why didn't you drop that earlier? Why are we bringing that out now? This should have been like 7 episodes ago. We'd have like 35 more listeners by now if you'd have been dropping these sort of times. Instead, you were referencing authors nobody ever heard about. All right. I'm sorry to those authors. That was deeply demeaning.
I think it ultimately creates silos in your organization too at the end of the day, because then all of a sudden you're not this cohesive unit making sales. You're like these siloed off kind of departments at that point. And that is
1,000%.
So detrimental.
It's antithetical to revenue operations, which is you are listening to the RevOps podcast. Your job is to align. I don't care if you're sales, marketing, CS, RevOps, sales ops, marketing ops, CS ops. Your job is to align those teams. It absolutely is, no matter what. And so if you are listening to this podcast, go do some aligning. Everything else is wrong and it's hurting your business. All right. I love it. Everybody who's listening, thank you for bearing with us in the first episode of what I would call RevOps 201. I hope everybody really likes it. Please send me your feedback, thoughts, and questions, concerns, or topic ideas, of course. Also, send me your questions for this week on LinkedIn. Super important. We love answering these. This segment's not going to change because I find it very fun and enjoyable. I don't care about Brandon and Jonathan's opinions on it. So we're gonna keep that the same. But until next week, we'll see you guys then.
Thanks, guys. Talk to you later.
Everybody.
Bye, guys.